Argyle a couple of months ago, and our good friend John and Dana hosted a fundraiser for Women on the Wall, and we had this big banner, and it said, "Seek the truth, share the truth, and stand for the truth." And at that time, we were exposing C-scope in Arlington too, in Argyle, and across Texas, and we have been successful. I know our local school board in Argyle, once they were made aware of the issue, did the right thing and unfunded it. And really that's the message. There's so much information coming at us that's affecting our children and our grandchildren, and we need to educate ourselves, and then when we find out about things that aren't good for them, we need to step up and say no. And so Marla is running for her local town council, and then Craig, your husband, is actually running for school board.
Yes, he
as
is.
well.
Yep.
Well, we're going to get back to that,
Okay.
but I want to start out the show because there is this big issue. We were fighting C-scope, but there's a bigger issue of Common Core. And the Common Core is a set of national standards, but it's much bigger than that. Yep. It truly is a philosophy of education. And we're going to start by playing a video. We had an education summit in Houston at the King Street Patriots location, and our friend Mary Bowen spoke, and I want you to hear what she has to say because she pretty much lays out what Common Core is in a nutshell. So Josh, our producer, let's go.
There was a document called the 2020 Vision, the Education Roadmap. And the most important thing about this document is that it was spelled out very clearly that the goal was to essentially do away with the elected school boards in local districts. Linda Darling Hammond, who you heard Alice talk about, and Bill Ayers are very good friends. Bill Ayers is, of course, a radical. These are some of his quotes. "Teaching urges revolutions, small and large. Education is the motor force of revolution." And if this isn't startling and dramatic, this is where these people's heads are at, folks. They see the schools as a tool to fundamentally transform society. And they desire that children leaving the schools don't identify themselves as living in a particular town. In other words, they're not from Katy, Texas. They don't identify, they're not a Boy Scout or a Catholic. They're a global citizen. When Common Core and its evil twin sister C-scope came into the Texas schools, the Texas Education Agency published a document telling you what they were doing. And they said that if there is a curriculum that is common, and you can call that Common Core if you want to, that if that is put in with unconditional delivery, that means people don't have a choice anymore, that this is the only way to ensure educational equity amongst students. And so what this is doing is it's driving a factory model of our educational system where all the children come in and they get on this sort of conveyor belt. And when they pop off the other side of the conveyor belt, they're all equal. There's only one big problem with this business model of education is it's un-American. Because here in this country, when you go to school, it's a door of opportunity. You can walk through the door and you can take the opportunity. You can make a success of yourself. But we're supposed to have freedom. And we can't have freedom without free will. And part of free will is I walk through the door and I don't pick up the opportunity. I choose either to fail or I choose a road of success that looks different than what you might design for me. Because in this country, we forge our own path. So how can somebody make decisions for me before I even arrive at the school about what success is going to look like for me and when I pop out the other side of the conveyor belt?
The Governors Association is a nonprofit organization out of Washington, D.C. It's not state-led. And then you look at Texas and you look at the strategies and tactics of how C-Scope was put into 875 districts across our state, and they said it was district-led. And isn't it interesting, because the copyright to C-Scope is owned by the 20 education service centers whose directors formed a nonprofit organization that owns the copyright. And because of the hard work of a lot of the people in this room, C-Scope has had to rebrand itself. And it's no longer called C-Scope, it's TEACS Resource Services. So looking back, and we think about the green, yellow, and red people, and we look at Texas, who, you know, in Texas, we passed a law, HB 462, that says we don't have Common Core in Texas. We said no to Common Core. We don't have those national standards. Well, from all of the talks that you've heard today, Common Core is not about a set of national standards. Common Core is about a philosophy of education. C-Scope, or TEACS Resource Services, or whatever you want to call it, is about a philosophy of education of Linda Darling Hammond. Social emotional learning, a dumbing down of our system, equalizing America in the world. So when you look at Texas, and you look at the illusions that have been created to say that we don't have Common Core in Texas, we passed a law so our elected officials can say we are against Common Core. But that HB 462 just says that the Common Core national standards can't be mandated on our district.
Marla, hearing what we heard, because this is the first time that you've heard this, what is that gut feeling inside?
You know, it's terrifying. It's almost so much information. As an individual, I can see where moms feel like it's overload, and what can I do? What can my one voice do in a situation that's grown so big? But then we have people like you, who you are on the front lines, and it's one voice at a time. It's people coming together as a group. It's educating yourself on what is it my child's learning when they're away from me for 7 to 8 hours a day. Right. And, you know, hearing the lady, I think out of Georgia, who talked about, you know, if your child happens to be really intelligent and really excelling, and suddenly now they're a peer tutor for other children, and I mean, it brings everybody down to this level playing field. That's not a good thing.
No.
You have to have people, you know, within society who excel, who want to excel. That's our next leaders for the next generations to come.
Right. Well, and what's interesting is you don't see Jeb Bush's kids going to a Common Core school. You don't see Obama's kids going to a Common Core school. What they're doing is setting up a two-tier system where they control who the leaders are. And our children who are in public school, and even this is in public, private, and charter, they're all, because as we heard, all of the curriculum products that are out there,
90%.
90%. Our school districts don't have a choice. Actually, they do have a choice. They have a choice because they have a locally elected school board who can, one, demand that any instructional materials or textbooks that are purchased by the school district have gone through that review process by the State Board of Education. And that's one thing that we'll be trying to pressure at the state level during the next legislative session, that the Senate Bill 6 that opened the door for online instructional material, that we stop that we fix that legislation.
Right.
But you and I, our kids, they're in school now. Our kids don't have time. We don't have time to wait for the elected officials to fix it.
Right.
We have to fix it ourselves.
Right.
And I want to, you're running for local town council. And I think it's very important for people to understand that the economy of a community, in large part, is dependent on the school system that is there.
That's right.
And I think that it is going to be, in the future, a marketing tool for communities that have smart growth
Right.
within the community, and that if you don't have a Common Core school, if you have an engaged community where parents are working with school board and teachers and administrators and working together to find curriculum products that are piloted and proven successful, like Saxon Math. We've had Dr. Stan Hartzler in studio with us, who he quit teaching like Meg Norris because he was forced to use C-scope math. And he said he cannot, in good conscience, give these kids the illusion that they're learning math when he knows that they're not. And the reason why he knew was because he was part of the developing team back 30 years ago that developed Saxon Math and piloted the program. There are great English language arts. They may be in old textbooks, or they may be veteran teachers that know how to teach that. But I think that a local community that can take control and not allow this system that's been set up in education, where basically the school board looks to the superintendent to tell them exactly what they're going to put into the school district, and that superintendent and those principals are going to professional development through these associations in our 20 education service centers that are feeding them all this Common Core stuff.
Well, and then it takes, they alluded to the fact that their children become conveyor belt children.
Right.
But guess what? As a parent, that's the question you ask yourself. Am I going to become a conveyor belt parent? Am I going to step onto the belt, or am I going to step off?
Very good.
And the nice thing about our small towns, and they're all over Texas, is, man, that's the place to have a voice and be heard. And your neighbors with your superintendent, your neighbors with your school board. You know these people on a first name basis.
Right.
There's not a ton of red tape to get to them. They want you to call. It's an open door policy for small towns.
You're exactly right. And I have to give credit to our superintendent in that when I have gone in and raised the red flags about C-scope, from our superintendent to the principals, we held a community meeting. We brought in Dr. Stan Hartzler. We had these people come in and speak, and our school board did the right thing. They voted to unfund C-scope. We had another situation where it came to my attention that Argyle had joined a 14-district consortium to apply for a federal Race to the Top grant. And if they had won that grant, in taking that federal dollars, there's always strings.
That's right.
We would have been aligned with smarter balance assessments. That's the Common Core. So you have to understand the strategies and the tactics of how they're trying to get it in. And if we have a school board that understands the big picture, if we have a town council that understands the big picture and is working hand in hand with the local school board,
Right.
we can fortify our little community.
That's right.
And market it in a great way. We will be graduating students who are at all levels, are truly college and career ready. If they choose to go to college, they're not going to be taking remediation classes because
Right.
they haven't learned the Common Core math. They've actually learned sound math. So I want to talk a little bit about your race.
Okay.
And you've been out block walking.
Yes, I have. There's nothing fast about that.
No, there's not. They're not. And you know, and like you said, in our local community, you can have a voice pretty quickly.
Right.
We don't have a real big town.
Right.
But we've got some pretty big neighborhoods. So what have you been hearing and seeing out on the trail, if you will?
You know, people are scared of population growth, and it's a little blurry because the school district map, if you will, is so much larger than our city map.
Right.
And so, you know, you've got neighborhoods, you've got other towns coming into Argyle that are, you know, in our schools, and as a town, there's nothing we can do about it. You know, we have to be very intelligent about the way we allow our town to grow. And I think that's probably the biggest concern. You know, a small town, probably more so than a big one. A few people, a very few number of people can spread a few things through the town that are absolute deceit, really. There's no truth to it, but it scares people to death, you know, and we've had some of that happening in this election. And so, you want to get out there and just say, hey, go vote for me, and here's all the reasons why, but you do have to be a little bit on the defense.
Right.
Our town even had to be on the defense a little bit.
Right.
Because we are not, you know, the developer story for us, we are actively looking for good commercial partners.
Right.
And, you know, and that's great tax dollar, and it's not
Right.
so many more rooftops.
Well, and that's with this bond. Part of our bond capacity
Right.
is based on that so much is paid for through our property taxes because we don't have the commercial development.
That's right.
So we want good, smart commercial development. And so these are all the things that if you have elected officials, whether on the school board or on the town council, who are engaged because of their children.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, we've talked about it with state races with the lieutenant governor. That's one of the reasons why we've been holding our feet to the fire in the lieutenant governor's race, and I feel strongly that David Dewhurst, and let me preface this real quick, that Women on the Wall does not endorse, so this is my own personal endorsement, got to cover all the legal things, but that he's willing to look at the issues and fight like a dad.
Yeah.
I want
and
elected officials that fight like a dad.
And that's a good point. You know, there are some great town council people on right now. However, I am the only one on council who has children in the district. You know,
That's
and
huge.
it is huge. You know, you have to embrace the school district, and quite frankly, Argyle is what it is because of this amazing school district that we have.
Right.
It's why we came. It's why we bought land 11 years ago without even having children yet. You know, in the hopes that we could move to Argyle by the time we had kids.
And that makes a huge difference.
It
You
does.
have a vested
It does.
interest in
And
it.
we're surrounded by families who are so involved
Right.
on every level. But, you know, again, there's these little opportunities for government to move in. And one of the things that scares me to death are the kids all having iPads and how the government can keep up with all. Oh, it just.
The data collection.
Yes.
It's a huge, huge issue.
It's the string attached.
Exactly, exactly. Well, and there was a story that came out this morning, and Rick, you may not have heard this story. Our good friend Meryl Hope, who writes for Breitbart, Texas, who moved to Texas from California to escape the Common Core, and gets to Texas and realizes, oh my gosh, it's here. So Texas schools apply Common Core through YouTube. So in this bond package that we have, because I'm really torn, because I'm not totally against the bond package, because we need a middle school.
Right.
We don't have a middle school.
It's space.
It's space,
Yeah.
and the growth is coming. So
Right.
I'm not totally closed to the bond, but when we have $2 million in the bond for technology, and part of that is to buy laptop computers, and by the way, that we're financing for 30 years that will be obsolete in a year.
That's right. That's right.
And that came out on our conference call last night. Our friend Matt Armstrong from Frisco was telling us, and I was like, what are we doing with this? But look at this. YouTube, and I want people to go to Breitbart, Texas, and read this article book, but there's 850,000 channels created by more than 1,000 partners from around the world. And the YouTube spokesman named some of these where they're partnering to teach American history and all of these classes through YouTube. Well, when you start looking at the American history on these YouTube classes, they offered American history, Bush's first term, Enron, No Child Left Behind, Bush, and then they talk about Katrina, the Iraq surge, the mortgage mess, the history of slavery in America, women's suffrage movement, and the stopover with Hillary Clinton that ended with the election of Barack Obama. That's their American history. And then you hear the YouTube videos that are read along about President Obama, and the titles are a little nicer. Give America a raise, raise the minimum wage, and restoring opportunity for all. They're using technology. What they're creating and what they call it is digital citizens. And so
and it's created history. It's not
it's not
opinion history. It's not factual history. You know,
And that's
don't
your
spoon feed
Fabricated
a
history.
child. Fabricated history.
You don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
And so we need to start listening to the generation before us who understand what's happening. Because if we don't,
Right.
our children are the ones that are going to suffer the consequences.
And what are we doing?
And what are we doing?
We want to become the people who say, I know that I know I know. I know that I know I know. And we need more people who can get in that category through people like you and Women on the Wall and other movements in this nation. And God bless you. Y'all are doing an extremely good job. It is overwhelming how good it is. But everybody can't do the same thing. So we need a bunch of people like you doing individual projects. End of story. Don't take my word for it. Take somebody else's word for it that you believe in. Ask God.
Right.
Read the Bible.
Exactly.
Ask God.
Yeah.
Well, and Bill Ayers, there's a video of him talking to a grassroots community organizers, and he said, listen, we are not going to depend on Obama to fundamentally transform our nation. We have to do it ourselves. And he said, don't try to reach the seats of power that you don't have access to. Reach the seats of power that you have direct access to. Town council, mayors, school boards. So how do we fight back? Town council, mayors, school boards. And that's why I'm so excited that in our little town of Argyle, we can be the example of a community that comes together and works together, that our town council understands the big picture, that our school board understands the big picture and is willing to speak truth to power and fortify our community. Because if we do it in Argyle,
Right.
they'll do it in Sanger, they'll do it in Flower Mound, they'll do it in Arlington, and it gets bigger and bigger. So that's why I'm so excited about you and Craig, because Marla's running for town council, her husband's running for school board,
Right.
and we have an opportunity. I had another school board candidate call me, and he said, well, what's the solution? How do we fight back? And I said, it's us. We're the solution. And I said, you running for running for school board is the solution.
And it's one step at a time.
It's one step.
You know, it doesn't happen overnight, but it's got to start. You know?